and realizing that I was usually uh, the mentality is a shift from I am uh, uh, feeling a low heavy sound as opposed to here, look at this low heavy sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And communicating to people, this is the thing that I'm holding as opposed to I'm holding this thing.
Yeah.
And then there was something else. Oh, about singing, singing inside kind of thing, because it was reminding me of this exercise at this Illinois conducting symposium I was at, which was good and bad. And I was finding that I think some of my disconnect physically to the sound was maybe from them kind of loosening me up a little bit. Day one, they were like, "You're holding on to the sound too much," and so then I was like, "Okay, I'll try to accommodate that." But one of the exercises we did was conduct, and as you're conducting the music, hiss, and then when it's time to breathe for an entrance or some kind of musical event, to breathe and then continue hissing. And for different people, it was doing different things, but I was reminded of that exercise.
There's a, I just think that it's important that as we're singing through, the way I study a score, I don't actually beat through it per se.
Yeah.
If there's a tricky, fermata, it's a tricky sound, I might just sort of lightly think I'm going to do that, and I know how my hand is moving. If it's something that's not an obvious thing, but when I start, this is why singing through the various lines is really important, because a couple of things happen. Your arms will not contradict your voice. That means for articulations, is it short? Is it long? What is it? You have to work really hard to do something different from a physical gesture to what you're producing.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about how to, because my students are always asking me now, how do I internalize the score? How do I get it into my body? And I always go right back to my own initial training, which was always you sing and you jump around, and it doesn't matter if every pitch is perfect and exact. That's not the point of it. But the point of it is sort of kind of getting a sense of what's the articulation, what's the line. And I can remember many lessons with Brooke where we would sit there in, him in one chair, me in another chair, and he'd be like, okay, sing and conduct. And you start, and the second you did something with your arm, he'd be watching, he'd be listening and watching. The second you did something with your arm that was not related to what the voice was producing, that's what he would stop you and say, why did you do that?
Yeah.
So to get the idea of if I was thinking from the body standpoint, if I'm thinking this very beginning, and I'm just kind of thinking through, now just physically watch what my body does, okay? I'm not going to beat, but I'm going to be thinking, first of all, it's important to sing in dynamic. Because if I just went, I'm not actually internalizing. I'm singing what's sort of there, but that's not what the music is. Okay, so if we're thinking about the idea of what is the sound, great. Okay, so I'm going to be sitting there and I'm going to go, ti ta 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 ta, ti ra 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 di di ra, ti ta. But you see my arms, I allow my body to react. I don't do this. Da, 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 because it's how you begin to internalize that sound in your body. Now, all I do at that point, if I really want to think about my gesture, I might then sort of lightly, go back. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like the right tempo shifts to me. This sounds, the breaths. But I mean, the things like, that crescendo, you see the crescendo. You take the breath in the dynamic of the thing that's coming. You make a little bit of extra weight before before the return to the Trattenuto. So that the breath and all of this tempo shift is all one thing. So if I now sort of think like, well, all right, well, maybe I just want to get a little bit more feel of it in my body. So I might sort of allow myself to move a little bit more and think about ti ta ta ti ta ti ra ta ra ta ta ra ti ram ti ta 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 ti ra. So I'm holding my sound and I'm starting to see what that feels like. All I'm going to do when I actually get up in front of them, all I'm going to do from that point is I'm going to do what my body wants to do, what it wants to show. I'm just not going to make it sound. But the only way you can do that is to have gone through this process of what does it feel like to do this intense sequence. And then when you get to that point and you then let them be your voice, let the weight of their sounds and ride it. And I don't want you to misconstrue that what we've been saying about you're a little on the surface, you're kind of riding on the surface. It's not what I mean by riding. What I mean by riding is let it pick you up and buoy you so that you're feeling they're supporting. And it's a two-way street. It's what they're doing, it's what we're giving, and we kind of feed energy off of each other. That will then make this whole thing something that is connected from a sound standpoint. But I think that the process of doing that starts with really just that simple little thing that I just did. You don't try and move, but you don't stop yourself from moving. If that's what your body wants to do, you don't stop yourself. You sing through it with all dynamics, with all marking, whatever the marking that you think that you're trying to get in, what is an accent in Trattenuto? Is there a difference between an accent and the line over this? Is the weight different for that? How does your voice respond to that so that you're training your body to react to sound? That's really what you're doing. And then all you have to do, easier said than done, but all you have to do then is when you're going to conduct that, and we're not making a sound, but they will, is to try and engage that. In other pieces that require different things from us, in other things, I might want to make sure that I'm thinking about an articulation. I might want to be thinking if I'm going merrily along, let's just pick anything. Okay, the beginning of the Confortatis, okay? And I'm going to be singing, if I'm looking at the score, I'm singing, and I'm thinking about, well, what do I want that, what do I want that to sound like? So if I'm singing that, I'm thinking, is that the right articulation? Do I want or I want is that the articulation? Now, do you see my body react differently to each of those articulations? That's the key to what gesture is going to communicate to them most clearly. But if I wanted that last one where I would then give now if I want something a little bit but it's a little bit of a different sense. So you do that with every single piece, and you go multiple lines. try and float around the score to what's really, really important. Then also, when you get the main things, you know what the articulation of that is. Well, what's the articulation of the accompagnado section? You know, what is the baseline? Are they longish notes? Are they not? It's this kind of process of this is when I discuss think about the idea. This is internalized. To me, this is internalized. So that when I get up there, I'm not wondering. I've already made decisions about what I want to sound like. And I think I said the other day, it's important to know that those decisions that you make without them in front of you can ultimately turn out to be a bad idea if it doesn't work. Or you hear it and you think it's going to sound, and you're like, oh, no, I don't like that. Change. You can change your mind at any time. It's just really important to have that first place from which to begin work. So I think if you can spend a little bit of time over the next day or so, and really just in these opening bars, go back to square one. Just for now. I mean, I know you already have some experience with it, you have some ideas about it, but for now, go back to square one and sing through. Let your body move, but don't try and conduct. Then, when you feel comfortable that I've got this in my body, go back and do it again, and maybe conduct a little bit more. Just make sure it's not just kind of on top of it, it's always riding the sound. And then once you get some of this, okay, this gesture, I'm going to move this way. I know, I still have the weight of sound in my arms, but I'm not making huge, big motions. Then you know when you get in front of the orchestra, you're going to have to make much larger. You can't use that little version of it. That's only to kind of help begin to think about how am I organizing my arms. And then ultimately, when you get in front of them, I mean, if you want to practice from the standpoint, if you want to practice what that feels like, you can do a kind of, what is that arm gesture in forte? As time goes on, you won't need to do that. But if you want to do that so that you feel what the are we here in our visual field? Are we putting the sound all right here where it needs to be? So you might want to sort of practice through that. But I think if you can just take yourself back to square one and really just sort of like reimagine the process of how you learn this. Now that also means like when you get to things like bar 16, remember I told you, I think it's too soft. At that point, it's like I sense, I mean, yes, the bass is pianissimo, but everyone else is piano. And yes, the color is soltasto, which is a little bit more woofy. It's a little more transparent, not quite as substantive. But I think for us, I don't think we should be necessarily practicing what is tasto, because to do that, we would have to go, and we have to go shallow. I think for us, we always want to stay core of sound. And it's very much like, a lot of times, one of the hardest things we can get the chorus to do is sing piano on the voice.
Absolutely.
It's the hardest thing to get them to do, because the reaction is to go off voice, to get as soft as possible. It's like, but how, with real support, how soft can you actually sing and still be on the core of the sound? I kind of feel like this is a similar thing for the strings. It's a little bit like that. And if we, if we get a little bit too much with the tasto, that it becomes too off voice in our body, it will really be whiffy on them. Really whiffy. Let them do it. Yeah. Exactly, let them do it. But we still kind of want to sing in a piano, a nice, generous, healthy piano. And I think if we don't do that, then they don't feel like we're actually supporting the sound. I just want to also say, because I don't think we've had time to do this, did we discuss the idea, I know we've talked about the final kind of landing, the triple forte is the beginning of the climax, and that the real note is that note. Did we talk about pacing the diminuendo innuendo after that?
We did not talk about it.
Okay,
I remember
but did you hear me talking with somebody about it?
Right, yeah.
I think from the standpoint of our body energy, I think it's very, very important to not get too in other words, not start releasing too soon.
Until peaks.
Yeah,
The start of it.
Yeah, I would, when the colon dozy is, is indicated, yes, it's already mezzo forte, but they'll start doing that.
Yeah.
If we just then stay and then allow ourselves to begin relaxing the dynamic, from that point on, then everyone kind of does it together.
Yeah.
But I think if we start relaxing in the seventh bar, there's going to be it collapses.
Yeah.
And that ends up being a little bit too, that collapsing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I was just going to ask, for the movendo on measure 4, do you feel like that's a continuing movendo through until 8? Or is that an indication that we're just going to stay at 80 as indicated in measure 2? Is it?
My personal feeling is that it's more that we're just at that 80. It's just reminding us from this motive, as opposed to that the movendo continues all the way up to the triple forte. Between those 2 bars, I think you can. I would, if you can do it organically in a sense, I would say that you can keep kind of this forward intensity in bar 5. I would just be careful to not clip the breath.
Yeah.
If you clip the breath, then bar 5 sounds like a run-on sentence.
Yeah.
But if you observe the breath really, and then you continue to move 5 a little bit, so then when you have as long as you do it.
And that could be longer, or
I think it could be a little bit.
okay.
I mean, quasi fermata.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't get grotesque with it,
Right.
but you let them make sound, as an arrival, and then they can really dig in to the D flat. But you see, you can still kind of keep the feeling of movendo.
Yeah.
But if it's a continual, that becomes a bit. I felt that people were trying to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about it, but every time I heard it, I was like, oh God, I feel like that phrase didn't set. As long as you set the phrase, I think you're okay.
Especially the phrase at the
4 to the comma. Yeah. I mean, that's a key thing.
Yeah.
And I also don't know that we talked about this either, but he doesn't say.
Yes, there's no movendo.
There's no movendo. I'm not sure that doesn't mean we should not do it.
Except maybe in the middle of 14. But maybe that should be the.
Well, I kind of think that where he puts sostenuto, that's kind of back to the old tempo, the held back.
Yeah.
And I think if we just follow the motive, he's well established by this point that the is slower. So I think that by putting parenthetically sostenuto, I think he just missed parenthetically movendo.
Yeah.
That's my personal feeling. If you didn't feel it that way and you wanted to stay in the slower tempo, okay. But there's a logic to that motive is the one that moves forward a little bit. And then that makes sense then why he says sostenuto. Otherwise, you're in that tempo. Why would you need to change?
Yeah. The only curiosity is the change of articulation between and the woman notes also. But like the 13, like the high point of that violin one line has a tenuto as opposed to accent.
Yeah.
And then 14 has an accent as opposed to tenuto. So it's sort of confusing. Like what if the character is different?
Yeah, from a purely kind of intellectual standpoint, I think these are the questions you have to ask yourself. What does he mean?
Yeah, right.
And this happens in composers is.
Mhm.
There are contradictory markings, and you have to sort of go like, does he mean that?
Uh-huh.
Is it a sloppy mistake in copying?
Mhm.
And if he does mean that,
Mhm.
what is the difference?
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
I think you have to ask those questions and make some decisions as to if you do think there is a difference.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe he's actually just meaning the exact same thing and he
Mhm.
just happened to write it with a line this time.
Right.
I don't know. That's an open question. It's kind of like, why did he not write Movember? So I would encourage you to just keep asking those questions of yourself and try and come to some conclusion.
Mhm.
If you don't like it
Mhm.
when you hear it, you gotta change it. You know, I mean, ultimately that's it. It's just, it needs to communicate, and that's all it is.
May I ask one more question?
Of course,
On this
absolutely.
page?
Yes.
Measure 13.
Yeah.
Just the downbeat.
Yep.
Trying to figure out how to essentially, like full bow, like just whoa, and the breath. I was just trying to figure out like, technically what I have. One
Or you come up with I literally have like down lift.
Oh,
And use the left hand
yeah.
to establish the dee, da, da. And that shows them by doing yeah. And there's the cut.
Yeah.
So they know where to put the sound.
Yeah.
If you just go dee, da, da, it's hard to read the breath lift from that gesture. This confirms the breath lift.
Yeah. I was finding that I guess it was the first day, connected this and looking through the video, that I was cutting them short of their kind of the expressive length of their bow. You know?
Yeah, you have to be thinking about that. You gotta give them time you gotta give the notes time to
Sing,
to speak.
Yeah.
Sing, speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there is a, the bow needs space. So I think you have to sort of be conscious of that. And if you can kind of be really conscious of how, in order to sound good, how long does that have to be? I think it's sufficient to do just like da, 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 da. And I'm literally like subdividing. I'm literally like subdividing. So it's like da, 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 dee, da, dee, da, da, and then I can do my movendo. But that will give them enough time. If you just did dee, da, da, da,
Right.
There's this weird thing. It's kind of like the breath in bar 4.
Yes, right.
That if that is clipped, if the breath suddenly doesn't have the right length, then it feels like, oh my God. And that's when it feels unnatural.
Yeah.
So as long as you can just sort of think through what that breath length is,
Yeah.
and I think that's a good solution. It's literally one off and then move it. Yeah.
And so it's almost like another chord.
It's almost like a chord.
Okay. So then that makes me ask, sorry, no, this is complicated, but at measure 5, then, I was experimenting last time I conducted this to just go into the triple forte.
You could.
But some, because I think at that, anyway, but be, I think they end up on the. Oh wait.
I mean, if he's, I haven't paid attention to this, but if he's a down bow on the pickup to 5, which makes sense that would be on the down bow, then that up bow though.
Yeah,
I think he breaks it.
Yeah.
I think it's dee da da dee dee da da. I think they break it because the other people have to go da dee da 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 and they end down bow.
Yeah.
So if I was Moni, I would probably break the E flat, the slur, and play it separately so that it's a down bow
Right.
on the triple forte.
Right.
Now that all being said,
At 4 though. Sorry.
no, and that all being said, you can go to it by stretching and go without making a lift.
Right.
That's
That's
a,
mostly on.
that's a different, that all you have to do to show them is like dee da dee da da and connect.
No break.
No break. If you stop, yeah, if you stop, they'll think you want to break. So just stretch with, yeah. And it might have to be reconfirmed because we've been doing it a bunch of different ways. You might have to sort of say, I would really love to have a no break there. Is there a way we can organize this so that we just go right to without a break? That's an easy question. Okay. Sorry, you had something else?
Oh, the only thing I was going to say was at 4, he indicates that down mode. So then as it comes, actually works out to be,
yeah,
if it's up, down, up, down, and then everybody ends down.
Yeah, I mean, if he does it as it comes and then the lift, that he's up bow on the pickup to 5, that works. Either way.
It's interesting because then it makes me think that there's like this sort of up-down feeling that actually from pickup to 5 into 5. There's a sort of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these are considerations. Things to think about. Yeah.
So then, so my breaths here at measure 15.
I would be longer.
Yeah, longer for sure. Yeah. Almost full quarters.
Almost.
Yeah.
Because we're quite sustained and heavy at this point.
And I watch their bows to see that they go all the way back, and then
you can actually, because they have to go down. It's a combination of they need to know that you're with them and that you're paying attention to it, because otherwise they'll think like, all right. So your arm has to be a little bit in motion so that they see that and then you look at them.
Do you do the 1, 2 break? 1 or sorry, not 1, the half note.
So if we had the see I'm doing da I don't know whether in this acoustic a break might be better for the sound so that it comes in. That's another consideration also. Those kinds of like break, no break. Sometimes it's dictated by the acoustic of it. Because if you don't make a break in a very active acoustic, it can like cluster on top of each other. So the sound hasn't cleared before the new sound begins. So that's we'll have to see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see whether one is the better than the other.
Yeah. I also feel all the energy of these notes in this opening section, they're always like, there's a sense of the air after the note. It's like, this sort of thing. So then maybe this version also.
Yeah. And then you use that as a kind of breath release.
Yeah.
To make the next. Yeah. And this is just once it gets going, it gets going.
Yeah.
But I would very much be thinking for most of this, it's actually helpful to be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. I try not to stop the beat. This is not a stop technique.
Right.
It's a legato of the version of the stop technique.
Right.
So it's literally 1 and 2 and no, okay. Yeah, so one more time. 1 and 2 and there it is. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay. So then it just does what he literally says. It flows. You want that little extra nudge, the 1 and always to flow. And if you do that, then you just let it go, you know, and at that point, then it's just sort of, you know, enjoying it actually. I mean, after all of that, you actually get to enjoy this beautiful little thing. And it also allows you, like for instance, at 36, it allows you to control what the diminuendo and ritardando is there. So that you have the and you don't even need to go le, you could. But if you have the and then yeah, it's a little more moving. I don't think it has to be that much faster. It just kind of moves a little bit. I mean, we're at 120 and it's now 132, so it's around. You know, again, just as long as it feels like it's organic and it doesn't feel like suddenly we've imposed a new tempo, but that we just there's a logic to it. I would say that you're probably going to, by the time you get to 53, there you're probably going to want to give you're probably going to want to actually beat the question here, and I think there's something useful, at least in these first few bars at the più lento, because you've already set up a little bit of the old shape, but more of the pulse of each of the quarters. Then I will just caution you, don't get too slow.
Yeah, right.
So when he says poco ritardando, I think that's just to give the breath lift.
Yeah.
I don't think necessarily, personally, I don't think the next bar is continuing to get slow or slow. I think it can easily just dissolve.
Right.
That would be my.
Because also the trumpets and trombones have to also survive.
Yeah,
the whole time.
And that's small.
Yeah.
So just be careful about that. Then we had a little issue yesterday with this when we did this. That I think there needs to be some of your emotions in the acapella section were so tiny that it was very, now they're going to be way away from you. Right. So I think you have to imagine that I know what you were going for. You were going for this kind of intimacy, this real sort of, you can get that color and still have a large enough gesture. Because my hand is in the right color, but it's at least big enough that they can see. So try not to get too, what's the word I was using? Too intimate.
Yeah, too precious.
Don't get too precious and don't get too intimate. They need to see the beat. Because even just as far away as they were, people were not changing it the right way. They didn't read what you were doing. Because I think it was just a little bit too small.
Yeah. To show the way that the air moves.
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep the air moving because otherwise, if you literally just like for instance, I mean, as a singer, that's hard to pick unless you. Just keep it in motion so that we know where the breath is continuing. But if you just stop, it's like, oh. Yeah, right. I will warn you one other small little thing. Yes. I think a very light pulse for the trumpet. Yeah. If you have.
Should I do it?
You can do duples.
Okay. I did duples the other day, but I wasn't sure if that was allowed.
No, duples is okay. Okay. Because you don't need to do 1, 2, 3. It's just the whole notes. Yeah. So here, I would give. That last note is so hard. It's
To
so
play,
hard to
yeah,
play.
right.
To play really, it's muted and it's on the edge of speaking. Try and stay as generous with the sound of the beat so that they stay calm.
Yeah.
If you start doing something that's a little on the precious side,
Yeah.
it's really they'll split the note.
Right. Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
Right.
They'll split the note.
Yeah.
So just continue to be generous with the sound so that they know where I'm going to play, especially that last note. So they know where to go. If you make them nervous, that'll be hard. It's already hard.
Right.
But you'll make them really, it'll be really hard.
And then how do I know who should I be most concerned about? Now I'm thinking that I should be most concerned about the trumpet in terms of the length of the last note.
Yes.
Just like Lunga.
Yes.
Basically.
Absolutely.
So I'll just sort of be connected.
You'd be connected with the trumpet and just sort of like when you can see, try and keep it roughly in the sense of whatever feels like it's the right length. But if you see, I mean, keep an eye on them. If you see that there's a little bit of like, and they're kind of going, you might get like some like, it's getting close, you know, then react to it.
But to make sure not to look over in a sort of panicked way, like how long are you gonna last?
No, I would sort of, you know, you have, and then I'm kind of just glancing back, like, and let it release. It's just a little bit of contact, but yeah, don't because they'll split that cause them to split the note. Yeah, but you know, just contact.
In terms of the length, on measure 60, that the viola, solo viola, has a longer duration there. Should I be concerned about that? Should I just be listening for it?
Be in contact with him.
Yeah.
Just so that he knows for sure, because that may not be obvious in his part when he hears everyone else drop out.
Right.
Yeah, you might have to. You might have to just make sure, like no, it's. Yeah, and if you have just a little bit of contact.
Yeah.
That's always bizarre when everyone else drops out and you're like, I'm holding the note. Am I supposed to be?
Right?
Is this right? You know, it's a little weird.
Yeah.
But I know why he did it. He's trying to keep that tonality through to let it ring a little bit longer. I mean, it's smart what he did to make that connection a little easier harmonically.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Questions so do you feel at measure 53 into 4 that basically we're retarding into the tempo?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Not below it.
Yeah.
And then no, I would say
to
that.
it.
Right, to it. You're making that più ritardando is going to it. Yeah. I think that's a very good.
For this legato subdivided thing, should I also be thinking about employing this thing that you were working on with Jabari yesterday, which is sort of like this? It goes like 1, 2, that it sort of leads into each of the beats in a way.
Well,
or is it fluty?
What we were doing was more the idea of you're connecting between the beats. That's how you get a legato, and we know that there's a point to the legato. The problem with that would work if they were all even.
Yeah.
But it's even odd, even odd.
So that only works.
And the difference in seeing in the big beats, if I was to do it, I mean, if you're thinking about the
right.
That's hard to subdivide and read, which is why the idea of going it helps for tell it through. If you're just in the long beats, it's almost impossible to know that that's one quarter note more than this beat. So I think in this particular instance, the technique that we were working on with him yesterday, that's not possible in this spot. And that's why this spot needs to have to. But that technique is very, very useful when you're conducting slow, when you have an even subdivision of the meter. That's very helpful.
Oh yeah, okay. Am I the last one?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, no one interrupted. I guess I have one more question about trumpet brass entrance at measure 28 and trumpet trombone.
Yes.
Well, technically, but how to be clear, but also encourage this diminuendo that's happening, and whether or not, I guess I've always been encouraged for brass. They like really vertical things, I guess, sometimes, like in terms of like you play now as opposed to you play now. And I'm worried about that it goes to 3.
I actually think that if you're in this instance, I actually think pattern integrity is probably important.
Okay.
Because of the way that this is organized. So I would be thinking when you have the you can make a diminuendo with your left hand.
Yeah.
But I would look, but I would keep. They'll be fine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they know when, but not here.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because what you're in the middle of that bar, so you're basically inviting them to join.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's a different kind of entrance.
Yeah.
They're just joining the section.
Yeah.
Good.
I think so. Well, I guess sorry. Very last question.
Yeah.
Measure 44. I've kind of tried to figure out a few ways to. Well, actually, in general, there's a few string divisi that we don't quite have the forces for. So the first one is here at measure 44. We only have 4 celli, as far as I know. But if the fourth solo just plays the other part, the octave part, then all the notes are covered.
Yeah, they could play. They could play the fifths and everything like that. Or you can also just you might ask. You might have to. We can figure out how to fudge that. But another way of fudging it is to ask one of the bass players.
Yeah.
To just play it.
Right.
That bar before they come in.
In the right octave.
In the right octave.
Not in the bass octave, but in the right
Right.
octave. So that's another thing.
Okay. And then measure 57 is the other one. And for viola, I was wondering, since we have 4, like in general, maybe I would be asking for string divisi, how do you think about numbers and stuff, or proportions and
It depends on the context entirely.
Yeah.
I generally will put more on a lower note.
Okay.
Just from an acoustical standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to kind of play around with the balance, and then of course in that instance, if there are 4 of them, one is playing a solo.
Right.
So if the second player plays the D flat, and the other 2 play the F, the one who's playing the D flat is going to have to play just a little bit more to balance the chord out. But I mean, always you try and make as even as possible. But if you have uneven division, and again, you have to use your ear.
Yeah.
I generally try and put more on the bottom note of the division.
And then as far as like how the rehearsal goes tomorrow, do I address these divisi before I do the run through?
I would, in a way, quite frankly, that is actually, unless you have a very specific thing, I would not stop tomorrow. There's not enough time to stop tomorrow and fuss with the Vizis. They'll know that they have to work it out.
Yeah.
Just let them work it out.
Yeah, I'll just say, could you work that
You won't even have to say.
out? Yeah, I'll just be like,
They'll be like, and you might see a little conversation.
yeah,
Let them do it.
yeah. They'll like be playing
The
ball
only-
field before.
Yeah. And the only time that it might be, if they have a question about how to do it,
Mhm.
then they'll ask you.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherwise, if they don't ask you, they've worked it out.
Right.
So that's the nice thing about it.
Okay.
But there will be times when they'll sit there and say like, they'll be going, and they'll be like, well, we have this too easy. How would you like us to do it?
Yeah.
But if they think they know what they're doing and they're all set with this whole thing, they won't even ask you the question. They'll just do it.
Yeah.
So there's not really something that we need to do in terms of that. So I wouldn't even raise the issue unless they bring it up.
Yeah.
And
Would you
they
say
bring,
that's a general rule?
it's just generally.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there is a question about how to divide.
Mhm.
My preference, quite frankly, is to divide by stand,
Mhm.
not on the stand.
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
Many conductors divide on the stand.
Right.
I actually prefer to divide by stand.
Yeah.
And most of the major orchestras do that.
Mhm.
They divide by stand,
Mhm.
as opposed to inside, outside, inside.
Uh-huh.
That's an older way of thinking about it, and most of the major orchestras have moved to a system of top, bottom,
Uh-huh.
because it puts two players on each part,
Yeah.
and you can hear a little bit better.
Yeah. Right.
That's just the way it works.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Good.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You are quite welcome.
Very helpful. How are you feeling?
Good.
Yeah. You weren't up too late last night.
Well,